So we're going to be discussing factoring. So when I think about factoring, normally we're going to be given some big, long, nasty mathematical equation, and we're going to want to look at that big mathematical equation and look for what's similar across the whole thing. And then we're going to, quote unquote, factor out the thing that is similar. So let's do a quick example. So if we have 3x cubed times y minus 6x squared y squared minus 3xy to the cubed. When taking a look at this big old thing, we see that we have three things in this mathematical equation. We're going to look for what's similar across all three things. So let's first look at the numerical numbers. We see that we have a 3, a minus 6, and a minus 3. So we can see that we're going to be factoring out a 3. Alright, we got an x to the cubed, an x squared, and a single x. So we're going to be able to factor out a single x. Alright, we have a single y, a y cubed, and a y. I meant a y squared and a y cubed. We're going to be able to factor out a single y. So this 3xy is what's going to be factored out from all three of these things here. So if we're going to factor out a 3xy from 3x cubed y, we're just going to be left over with an x squared. Alright, if we're factoring out 3xy from minus 6x squared y squared, we're going to be left over with a minus 2xy. And then lastly, we have minus 3xy cubed. If we're going to factor out 3xy, all we're going to be left with is going to be a y squared. And that's how we did it. So we found out what we're going to factor out from all three terms, and then we're going to have to figure out, if we factor out 3xy, what are we going to have left over? So 3xy times this big old thing, x squared minus 2xy minus y squared, is factoring that equation. All right, so let's do another example. Example B. So if we have 3y times 2y plus 5 plus 2 times 2y plus 5, we see that we have two separate things in our mathematical equation, and we're going to want to figure out what can we factor out. So let's first look at the numbers. We have 3 and 2, and we can't really factor out anything from 3 and 2. We have a y here, but no y here, so we're not going to be able to factor out a single y at all. But when looking at 2y plus 5, we see that we have also a 2y plus 5 over here. So that is what we are going to be able to factor out. So 2y plus 5 is what we're going to factor out. And if we factor out 2y plus 5 from that first thing here, all we're going to have left over is 3y. If we're going to factor out a 2y plus 5 from the second thing, all we're going to have left over is 2. So that is factoring that second equation. We figured out what we're going to factor out, and that was this 2y plus 5. And then we factored out 2y plus 5 from this first term, and we factored out this 2y plus 5 from the second term, and we were left with 2y plus 5 times 3y plus 2. All right, so let's work with some special factoring formulas that's going to be useful for us in the future. So we're going to have special factoring formulas. All right, so the first one, special factoring formula number 1, we got u squared plus 2uv plus v squared. Well, that's simply just going to be u plus v squared. All right, second factoring formula that we're going to be dealing with, we have u squared minus 2uv plus v squared. Well, that's actually very similar to the first one. It's just that we have a minus in the middle term. And similar, that's just going to be u minus v squared. All right. The third one that we're going to have is the difference of squares, u squared minus v squared. that is going to be can be expressed as u plus v times u minus v. Alright, just a special note, don't make this big old mistake, that u squared plus v squared cannot be factored to u plus v squared. Don't make this mistake. I see this mistake all too often. U plus v simply cannot be factored to simpler expression. Alright, so let's go dealing with a quick example. So if we have x squared minus 16y squared, that's example A, well, we can factor this out. And we can actually see that this, we have the difference in two squares. So this first one here, we have an x being squared, and we can see 16y squared, well, that's just 4y squared. So looking, we can see that's actually going to be very similar to what we got going on right here. So we know that x squared minus 16y squared, well, that's just going to be x minus 4y times x plus 4y. And that is factoring that x squared minus 16y squared. And that summarizes our nice little lesson talking about factoring and factoring.